Have you ever found yourself driving down a lonely stretch of highway, the sun dipping below the horizon, and you roll into a sleepy little town you've never seen before? You slow down, passing a weathered water tower, a single flickering streetlight, and a row of silent, dark-windowed shops, and for just a moment, a strange feeling washes over you, a prickling on the back of your neck, an unshakable sense that this quiet place holds a secret. It's a feeling countless travelers have known, the haunting suspicion that beneath the placid surface of America's smallest communities, there are stories whispering on the wind, legends that have been passed down for generations. This isn't just about ghost stories, it's about the very soul of a place, the inexplicable events that become woven into the fabric of a town's identity, creating a mystery that outlives everyone who first experienced it. Today, we're embarking on a journey into the heart of that mystery. We're leaving the well-trodden paths of big cities and famous landmarks to venture into the shadows of forgotten backroads and isolated valleys. Our mission is to uncover the strangest small-town legends in America, tales so bizarre and deeply rooted that they defy easy explanation. These are not just campfire tales. They are the anomalies that puzzle historians, intrigue paranormal investigators, and captivate the locals who live with these legends every single day. From phantom hitchhikers who appear on the same curve for decades to entire communities built around a single, unexplainable event, we will explore the corners of the map where the line between fact and folklore becomes beautifully, terrifyingly blurred. This is more than a collection of spooky stories. It's an exploration of the American landscape itself, a journey into the collective imagination of small-town life. These legends often speak to universal human fears and wonders: the fear of the unknown, the longing for connection beyond the grave, the mystery of what might be hiding just beyond the tree line. As we delve into these accounts, you'll discover that the truth can be far stranger than any fiction, and that some of the most incredible chapters of American history are written not in history books, but in the hushed tones of local diners and the cautious warnings from longtime residents. So settle in and keep a light on, because we are about to pull back the curtain on the eerie, the uncanny, and the utterly fascinating world of America's most enduring small-town mysteries. Our journey into the strange begins in a place where the Ohio River flows quietly, a town called Point Pleasant, West Virginia. In the mid-1960s, this peaceful community became the epicenter of one of the most chilling and enduring paranormal mysteries in American history. It all started on a cold, dark night in November 1966. Two young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette, were out for a drive near an area known as the TNT area, a series of abandoned World War II munitions bunkers. As they passed the old power plant, their headlights fell upon a staggering sight: a tall, man-like figure standing over 6 feet tall with massive wings folded against its back. But the most terrifying feature was its eyes, large, glowing, and red, seeming to pierce right through the car windows. The creature somehow took to the air without even flapping its wings, keeping pace with their vehicle as they sped away in sheer terror, reportedly reaching speeds of over 100 miles per hour before it finally vanished. This was not an isolated incident. In the following year, dozens of other credible witnesses came forward with similar accounts. A fireman described it with clinical precision. A contractor saw it perched on the roof of a shed. The reports were consistent: a gray, winged humanoid with a staggering wingspan and those haunting, pulsating red eyes. The local press, searching for a name, dubbed it the Mothman. The town was gripped by a palpable fear. The abandoned TNT area, with its eerie, igloo-like concrete bunkers hidden in the woods, became the focal point of the phenomenon, a place where dogs refused to enter and where an unsettling silence was said to reign. This wasn't just a ghost story, it was a physical, tangible presence that was seen by ordinary people, leaving an entire community questioning the very nature of reality. Then tragedy struck in a way that would forever bind the Mothman legend to Point Pleasant's fate. On December 15, 1967, during the evening rush hour, the Silver Bridge, a vital link connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio, collapsed into the icy waters of the Ohio River. 46 people lost their lives in the horrific disaster. In the aftermath, many residents made a disturbing connection. The flurry of Mothman sightings had seemingly ceased right after the bridge fell. To them, it wasn't a coincidence. The creature was reinterpreted not as a monster, but as a harbinger, a dire warning of the impending catastrophe. This belief, whether rooted in folklore or a desperate search for meaning in a senseless tragedy, transformed the Mothman from a local scare into a symbol of impending doom, a legend that captured the nation's imagination. Instead of hiding from this bizarre chapter in its history, Point Pleasant has wholeheartedly embraced it. The Mothman is no longer just a specter of fear, it has become the town's proudest ambassador. Every September, the town hosts the Mothman Festival, drawing thousands of curiosity seekers and paranormal enthusiasts from around the world. The streets fill with vendors, guest speakers, and even a 12-foot-tall stainless steel statue of the winged creature, a permanent monument in the town square. There's a museum dedicated to preserving every scrap of evidence and every first-hand account. The legend gave the town a unique identity, a story of resilience and mystery that turned a potential mark of shame into a source of community pride and economic vitality. The Mothman's story endures because it taps into something deep, the fear of the unknown, the search for omens in a chaotic world, and the incredible power of a community to write its own destiny, even from the pages of a terrifying mystery. But while the Mothman is a legend born from a specific time and tragedy, our next stop takes us into a deeper, more personal kind of fear, the terror of what might be hiding just beyond the backyard fence, a story passed between generations of teenagers in the dark. From the riverbanks of West Virginia, we travel north to the dense, rolling woodlands surrounding Kirtland, Ohio. Here, the legend isn't about a singular, ominous creature, but an entire community of outcasts lurking in the shadows. They are known as the Melonheads, and their story is a chilling tapestry woven from societal fears and the inherent creepiness of abandoned places. The origins of the Melonheads are as murky as the woods they are said to inhabit, with several competing versions that all point to a similar, tragic beginning. The most common tale begins at the nearby Cleveland Asylum for the Criminally Insane, or sometimes a mysterious, isolated scientific institution. In this version, a fire, a convenient and tragic catalyst for so many urban legends, frees a group of patients or test subjects. These weren't ordinary people. They were individuals suffering from a rare condition known as macrocephaly, which gave them unusually large, bulbous heads. Another, even darker origin story suggests the Melonheads are the descendants of a family of inbred outcasts who retreated into the wilderness generations ago to escape persecution for their strange appearance. In both narratives, these figures are not monsters by choice, but victims of circumstance, ostracized by the society that created or shunned them, forced to survive in the isolation of the forest. Their chosen territory is said to be a specific network of rural roads and dense woods, with Wisner Road being the most infamous epicenter of their legend. By day, it's a quiet, tree-lined lane, but by night it transforms into a rite of passage for local teens. The ritual is almost universal. You drive out to Wisner Road, you turn off your headlights, and you wait. The story goes that the Melonheads, drawn by the vulnerability of the intruders, will emerge from the darkness. They are described as small, pale, childlike figures with those unmistakably oversized heads and dark, sunken eyes. Some accounts claim they are harmless, merely curious. Others insist they are feral and hostile, throwing themselves at cars, scratching at the windows, seeking revenge on the normal world that rejected them. The power of the legend is amplified by the environment itself, the narrow road, the oppressive canopy of trees, the complete absence of city lights, and the very real possibility of an actual animal, like an owl or a fox, darting across the path at the worst possible moment. This legend serves a crucial function in the local culture, far beyond a simple scare. For decades, the tale of the Melonheads has been a cornerstone of teen life in and around Kirtland. It's a story told at sleepovers, a destination for dares, a perfect excuse to pack into a car with friends and share a collective thrill. The legend enforces a subtle, unspoken boundary, using fear to keep curious youngsters from wandering too deep into potentially dangerous, isolated woodland areas. But more than that, it gives a name and a shape to the nameless anxieties of adolescence. The fear of not fitting in, of being different, of being an outcast. The Melonheads are a physical manifestation of that deep-seated social fear. They are a warning of what could happen if you are pushed too far to the fringes, a chilling reminder that the wilderness, both literal and social, can hide things we don't understand. Unlike the Mothman, which is a grand omen of disaster, the Melonheads are a personal, intimate terror, a story that thrives not on national headlines, but on whispered secrets and the pounding hearts of teenagers testing their courage against the unknown. Leaving the whispered fears of the Melonheads behind, we travel deeper into the American South, to the small farming community of Kelly, Kentucky. Here, in August 1955, an event unfolded that stands as one of the most bizarre and well-documented close encounter cases in history. It wasn't a fleeting glimpse of something in the sky, it was a prolonged, terrifying siege on a rural farmhouse, witnessed by multiple level-headed adults and investigated by utterly baffled law enforcement. This is the story of the Kelly-Hopkinsville Goblin encounter. The evening of August 21st began as a typical family gathering at the Sutton farm. 11 people were inside the small home, including Elmer Sutton and his family and their guests, Billy Ray Taylor and his wife. The incident began with a simple, almost mundane task. Billy Ray Taylor went out to the well to draw a drink of water. He came rushing back into the house, breathless and pale, reporting that he had seen a glowing, silver object silently descend from the sky and land in a nearby gully behind the property. The family, skeptical of his story, initially dismissed it as an exaggeration or a prank, but their skepticism would evaporate within the hour, replaced by sheer, unadulterated terror. It started with the dogs barking frantically, then falling into an unnerving silence. Then the family saw a strange, luminous figure approaching the house from the darkness. It was described as being about 3.5 feet tall, with an oversized, round head, large yellow eyes that seemed to glow, and long, thin arms that ended in claws. Most chillingly, its body appeared to be a shimmering, metallic silver, and it moved with an odd, floating gait. What happened next was a full-scale assault. The creatures, for more than one appeared, began to approach the windows and the doors. The men of the house, armed with rifles and a shotgun, did what any rural Americans of the era would do: they opened fire. The reports from that night are consistent and horrifying. They claimed their shots hit the creatures squarely, only to hear a metallic ping as the bullet ricocheted off, seemingly having no effect other than to cause the being to flip backward and scurry away into the shadows, only to return moments later. This cycle of shooting, retreat, and return went on for hours. At one point, a creature perched on an awning and reached its thin, taloned hand down to touch the hair of one of the women inside. The family, believing they were under attack from something not of this world, made a desperate decision. They piled into 2 cars and sped down the dark country roads to the Hopkinsville police station. When they arrived, disheveled and hysterical, the police initially suspected moonshine or a massive family dispute, but the sheer number of witnesses, their genuine state of panic, and the fact that their stories aligned perfectly convinced the authorities to take them seriously. What the police found when they arrived at the Sutton farm was both confounding and eerie. There were no creatures in sight. However, the evidence of a violent struggle was everywhere. The property was littered with bullet holes, both inside and outside the house. Investigators found no blood, no strange footprints, and no physical traces of the silver beings. Yet the officers on scene reported an unsettling feeling, and some mentioned seeing strange, moving lights in the woods. The incident even drew the attention of officials from the nearby Fort Campbell Army Base, though their investigation was kept quiet, fueling speculation of a government cover-up. The family held their ground for the rest of the night, with the police standing guard, but the siege was over. By morning, the creatures were gone, leaving behind only a traumatized family and a mystery that would captivate the nation. In the decades since, countless theories have been proposed to explain what happened that night in Kelly, Kentucky. The most popular, of course, is the extraterrestrial hypothesis that the Sutton family encountered visitors from another world. Others have suggested these were misidentified great horned owls, whose glowing eyes in a flashlight beam and ability to withstand shotgun pellets could account for some of the details. Another theory points to a traveling circus that had recently been in the area, suggesting that escaped monkeys dressed in costumes could have been the culprits. Yet none of these explanations perfectly fit the strange, persistent, and interactive nature of the encounter as described by 11 separate witnesses. The Kelly Hopkinsville case endures because it lacks a simple answer. It sits in that uncomfortable space between folklore and potential fact, a story that challenges our understanding of reality and serves as a potent reminder that sometimes the most frightening things are not what we imagine in the dark, but what actually comes knocking on our door. From the chaotic siege in Kentucky, we venture further south into the humid, Spanish moss-draped lowcountry of South Carolina to a place where the very landscape seems to breathe with a life of its own. Here, in the murky waters and dense undergrowth of Scape or Swamp near the town of Bishopville, a different kind of creature is said to lurk, one not from the stars, but from the primordial ooze. This is the legend of the Lizard Man, a case that exploded into the national spotlight in the summer of 1988 with a visceral, terrifying encounter that felt more like a monster movie than a folk tale. The entire phenomenon hinges on the account of a 17-year-old named Christopher Davis. It was around 2 in the morning on June 29th when Davis was driving home after a long shift at his job. As he navigated the lonely road that skirts the edge of Scape or Swamp, he had a flat tire. He pulled over to change it, a routine task that quickly turned into a nightmare. After finishing the job, he was putting his jack back into his car trunk when he heard a loud, thumping noise from behind him. Turning around, he saw something impossible barreling towards him from the dark tree line, a towering figure over 7 feet tall, covered in greenish, scaly skin with glowing red eyes and 3-fingered hands that ended in sharp claws. Davis scrambled into his car and frantically tried to lock the doors, but the creature was already upon him. According to his testimony, the Lizard Man leaped onto the roof of his moving vehicle as he sped away, clinging on and slamming a clawed hand down onto the window, shattering the glass. Davis claimed he swerved violently, finally dislodging the monster, and didn't stop speeding until he reached the safety of his home, where his parents found him shaken and his car bearing the physical proof of the struggle, a cracked side view mirror and deep, parallel scratches along the roof. What could have been dismissed as a single teenager's tall tale quickly escalated into a full-blown media circus. The local sheriff's office, initially skeptical, found Davis to be genuinely frightened and his story strangely consistent. Then other reports began to trickle in. A young couple reported seeing a large, lizard-like creature running through a field. Another driver found their car severely scratched along the sides. But the most compelling piece of evidence came when investigators discovered a series of large, 3-toed footprints impressed in the soft mud near the swamp. These weren't vague marks, they were distinct, measuring over 13 inches long and appeared to show a bipedal gait. Plaster casts were made, and while some experts later suggested they could have been hoaxed using a device like a cutout alligator foot, the timing and location gave the legend a tangible, physical dimension that captured the public's imagination. The town of Bishopville was suddenly on the map, but for a reason no one could have predicted. Just as with Point Pleasant and the Mothman, the community of Bishopville faced a choice: shy away from the bizarre attention or lean into it. They chose the latter, transforming a potential mark of infamy into a unique source of local pride. The Lizard Man became an unofficial mascot. Local businesses sold Lizard Man t-shirts and souvenirs. The creature was featured in parades, and the area even began hosting an annual Lizard Man Festival, celebrating the strange event that put their small town on the national radar. This embrace highlights a fascinating pattern in these small-town legends. A terrifying, inexplicable event occurs, creating a shared trauma or mystery. Over time, the community reclaims the narrative, weaving it into their identity. The monster under the bed becomes the engine of the local economy, a story that binds residents together and draws curious visitors from afar. The lizard man is no longer just a potential threat, it is a symbol of Bishopville's resilience and peculiar character. Unlike the ethereal Mothman or the feral Melonheads, the lizard man feels distinctly physical and predatory. Its legend taps into a different, more ancient fear, the fear of reptiles, of swamps as impenetrable, dangerous wildernesses, and of a creature that is a direct, aggressive threat to human safety. The story resonates because it feels like a remnant from a lost age, a living dinosaur that has survived in the inaccessible depths of the swamp. While skeptics rightly point to the lack of conclusive physical evidence and the possibility of a clever hoax, the enduring power of the lizard man legend lies in its specificity. It's not a vague specter, it's a 7-foot-tall reptile with 3 toes and claws that leaves tangible scratches on cars and footprints in the mud. This combination of a detailed eyewitness account, supporting physical traces, and a setting that perfectly suits the creature's nature creates a legend that is remarkably stubborn, a testament to the idea that even in the modern world, there may still be dark corners hiding creatures we have yet to officially discover. From the sweltering southern swamps, we now journey to a landscape of a completely different character, the rugged, granite peaks and deep, silent forests of New England. Here, in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, the legends are less about monstrous creatures and more about the very fabric of reality itself. We venture into the story of a place that shouldn't be able to hide, yet somehow does, a grand mountaintop hotel that appears to travelers in their moment of need, only to vanish back into the mist when they try to find it again. This is the enduring mystery of the Vanishing Hotel of South Tamworth. Imagine you are a weary hiker in the early 20th century. A sudden storm has rolled in across the presidential range, the temperature plummets, and the wind drives a cold, soaking rain that chills you to the bone. Visibility drops to near zero, and you know you are lost and in genuine danger of hypothermia. Just as hope begins to fade, you stumble upon a sight that seems like a miracle, a large, welcoming hotel, its lights glowing warmly through the fog. You rush inside, finding a crackling fireplace, hot food, and comfortable lodgings for the night. The staff is friendly but quiet, and you fall into a deep, restorative sleep. The next morning, you wake to clear skies and sunlight streaming through your window. You go to settle your bill, only to find the front desk empty. You step outside to get your bearings, and when you turn back to thank the owners, the hotel is gone. In its place stands only a grove of ancient pine trees with no foundation, no rubble, and no sign that any structure ever stood there. This precise scenario, with slight variations, has been reported by a handful of travelers over the decades, creating one of the most haunting and elusive legends of the region. Unlike the aggressive encounters with the lizard man or the siege at the Sutton farm, these accounts are characterized by a profound sense of benevolence. The Vanishing Hotel isn't a threat, it's a sanctuary. It appears not to inflict terror, but to prevent tragedy. This shifts the legend from the realm of horror into something closer to a folktale or a ghost story with a protective purpose. The entity, if it can be called that, is the place itself, a spectral innkeeper that manifests out of the wilderness to offer shelter. This theme resonates deeply with the history of the White Mountains, which have always been both beautiful and dangerously unpredictable. The legend gives a kind of sentient, caring quality to the landscape, suggesting that the mountains themselves look after those who respect them but have lost their way. So, could there be a historical basis for such a fantastical story? The answer lies in the very real and tragic history of the grand resort hotels that once dotted these mountains. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the White Mountains were a premier destination for wealthy tourists from Boston and New York. They traveled by train to escape the city heat and stay in massive, opulent wooden hotels perched on mountaintops to take advantage of the breathtaking views. These structures, sometimes called palaces in the wilderness, were marvels of their time. However, they shared a common and devastating vulnerability: fire. Built largely of timber, heated by coal and wood, and lit by gas or oil lamps, they were virtual tinderboxes. Many of these magnificent hotels met catastrophic ends, burning to the ground in spectacular blazes that could be seen for miles. The Mount Prospect House in nearby Lancaster burned in 1928. The giant Mount Washington Hotel, which famously survived, was a rare exception. The legend of the vanishing hotel is almost certainly a folk memory of one such lost establishment, most commonly linked to the Mount Whittier Hotel in South Tamworth. This particular hotel was indeed real and quite popular in its day, but it was destroyed by fire in 1910. The stories of travelers finding shelter in a hotel that later disappeared began to circulate not long after its destruction. It's a poignant and psychologically understandable phenomenon. A hiker or hunter, perhaps familiar with the area's history but not the specifics, stumbles upon the old foundation or simply gets disoriented. In a state of exhaustion and exposure, the mind can play incredible tricks, filling in the details from stories heard in local taverns or from childhood memories. The brain, desperate for salvation, might construct the entire experience, a fully formed hallucination of the hotel in its heyday, complete with staff and other guests. Upon waking safe but confused, the memory hardens into what feels like a genuine supernatural encounter. This legend endures because it perfectly marries a tangible historical truth with a powerful, universal human need for protection and mystery. The burned-down hotels are a fact, the danger of the wilderness is a fact. The stories provide a beautiful, eerie bridge between the two. They allow us to believe that the past isn't entirely gone, that the hospitality and grandeur of a bygone era might still linger, ready to aid a worthy soul. It's a gentler kind of strangeness, one that speaks not of monsters from the swamp or omens in the sky, but of a landscape that remembers, a place where history occasionally bleeds through into the present to offer a second chance. But not all legends offer shelter or salvation. Some speak of places so inherently strange and unsettling that they are best avoided altogether, locations where the very earth seems to reject life itself. For our next stop, we travel to the deep, pine-covered woods of central North Carolina, to a place that has baffled farmers, scientists, and storytellers for over a century. This is the Devil's Tramping Ground, a perfect circle of barren soil where nothing will grow, a stark anomaly in the middle of a fertile forest that is said to be the nightly pacing ground of the devil himself. The physical description of the place is stark in its simplicity. Imagine a circle of bare, packed earth, roughly 40 feet in diameter, situated in a clearing off a quiet country road in Chatham County. It is a perfect, desolate patch, utterly devoid of any vegetation. No grass, no weeds, not even a single blade of green can take root within its boundaries. Surrounding this barren circle is a healthy, thriving forest, making the divide between the fertile and the fallow unnaturally sharp, as if drawn by an invisible hand. For generations, locals have tried to break the curse of this soil. They have planted seeds, laid sod, and even transplanted full-grown shrubs into the circle, but every attempt has ended the same way. The new vegetation withers and dies within days, or it is mysteriously found torn up and scattered by the following morning. The ground itself seems to actively resist cultivation, maintaining its stark, empty state against all human effort. The folklore that has grown up around this strange spot is as rich as the soil is poor. The most prevalent legend, the one that gives the place its name, is that this circle is where the devil comes each night to pace and ponder his evil schemes for the world. As the story goes, after the sun sets and darkness falls over the forest, Satan himself walks in a slow, deliberate circle, his footsteps burning the earth with such malevolent energy that no living thing can survive there. The intense concentration of his dark thoughts is said to poison the ground. This belief is supported by a peculiar and consistent claim: any object left within the circle overnight will be gone by sunrise. Campers and daring teenagers who have tried to spend the night report that items like coolers, chairs, or even tents vanish without a trace, or are hurled far out into the surrounding woods by an unseen force. Some even tell of hearing faint, ghostly whispers, or feeling an overwhelming sense of dread and being watched, compelling them to flee before the night is over. Beyond the devil himself, other tales offer different origins for the tramping ground. One Native American legend suggests it was the site of an ancient, powerful ceremony, a place where tribal dancers circled for so long that they wore the earth down to barrenness, leaving behind a permanent spiritual residue. Another story posits that it was a meeting place for a band of lost colonists from the Roanoke settlement, whose desperate prayers or curses cursed the land. There's even a more romantic, though equally tragic, tale of two lovers from warring families whose meeting place was discovered, leading to a curse that salted the earth where they once secretly met. These varied stories all point to a central theme. This is a place of intense, concentrated energy, whether it be evil, sorrow, or sacred power, that has left an indelible mark on the physical world. Of course, such a persistent and peculiar phenomenon has attracted scientific curiosity. Geologists and soil scientists have taken samples from the circle, searching for a rational explanation. Some early theories suggested a high concentration of salt or some other mineral toxin in the soil, perhaps from a long-vanished salt lick that prevented plant growth. However, laboratory analyses have repeatedly shown that the soil inside the circle is chemically virtually identical to the soil just a few feet outside it. There is no toxic mineral imbalance to explain the barrenness. Another theory points to the hard, compacted nature of the soil. Centuries of use, first perhaps by grazing animals circling a natural salt deposit, and later by countless curious humans walking the same path, may have compacted the earth so severely that it became inhospitable to root systems. This explanation, while logical, fails to fully account for the stories of objects disappearing or the pervasive feeling of unease reported by so many visitors. It also doesn't explain why, if it's just compacted soil, the circle has remained so perfectly defined for so long without vegetation slowly encroaching from the edges. The Devil's Tramping Ground endures as a legend because it occupies a compelling middle ground between a tangible, physical mystery and a profound, supernatural folklore. You can go there today, stand at its edge, and see the undeniable fact of the barren circle with your own eyes. This physical reality gives the spooky stories a powerful anchor. It's a place where science can offer a partial answer, but that partial answer leaves just enough room for the imagination to run wild. The legend serves as a classic cautionary tale, a natural landmark that has been given a dark, explanatory story to match its eerie appearance. It warns people away from a spot that is, at the very least, strangely unhealthy for plant life, and at most, a genuine gateway for forces beyond our understanding. It is a testament to the human need to explain the unexplainable, to look upon a blank circle in the woods and see not just a geological oddity, but the footprints of the ultimate evil pacing through the night. But if the Devil's Tramping Ground represents a fear of a place, our next legend taps into a fear of a person, or more precisely, a persona, one that should evoke laughter and joy, but instead became a symbol of pure terror. In the spring of 1981, a bizarre and unsettling wave of reports swept across the United States, creating a panic that seemed to target the very heart of small-town America. This was the phenomenon of the phantom clowns, a series of sightings that began not in a major metropolis, but in the suburbs of Brookline, Massachusetts, and quickly spread to towns from Kansas City to Pittsburgh. The reports were chillingly consistent. Children began telling parents and police about menacing clowns, sometimes described as wearing rainbow wigs and painted faces, other times as pale and sinister, who were allegedly trying to lure them into vans with promises of candy or money. The initial accounts from Brookline were specific and alarming. In late May of that year, several children independently reported being approached by a man in a clown costume driving a colorful van. He wasn't performing tricks or bringing joy, he was offering rides, his friendly disguise masking a sinister intent. The story spread like wildfire through the community, amplified by concerned parents and local news coverage. Almost immediately, a mirror incident erupted over 1,000 miles away in Kansas City, Missouri. There, the reports grew even more elaborate. Children described not just one, but multiple clowns operating from a fleet of vans, some even claiming the clowns had a hypnotic power or carried weapons. The police in both cities took the reports with the utmost seriousness, increasing patrols in school zones and issuing public warnings, which in turn fed the growing sense of panic. It felt like a coordinated, nationwide threat, a traveling circus of malice preying on the most vulnerable. What makes the phantom clown scare so fascinating to sociologists and psychologists is that it represents a textbook case of mass hysteria. Despite the hundreds of reports from numerous states, not a single child was ever physically harmed or abducted by a phantom clown. No clowns were ever arrested, and no suspicious vans were conclusively linked to the claims. The evidence was almost entirely anecdotal, passed from child to child in schoolyards and neighborhoods, then amplified by a media machine hungry for a sensational story. This phenomenon is often called an urban legend, but its rapid spread through small towns in 1981 shows it's more accurately termed a contemporary or mass legend. It spread through the communication networks of the time, local television news, newspapers, and most importantly, word of mouth among parents, creating a feedback loop where fear itself became the contagion. The choice of the clown as the central figure is deeply significant. On the surface, clowns are icons of fun and childhood entertainment, but just beneath that surface lies a powerful undercurrent of unease. The exaggerated, frozen smile, the complete concealment of a real face, the unpredictable behavior, these elements can easily tip from amusing to unsettling, a concept modern horror has masterfully exploited. The phantom clown panic tapped directly into this latent calrophobia, the fear of clowns. Years before Stephen King's It would cement the image of the predatory clown in the cultural psyche. The legend gave a concrete shape to the abstract, pervasive fear every parent has of strangers threatening their children. The clown became the perfect villain, a familiar yet alien figure whose very purpose is deception, making him an ideal vessel for society's deepest anxieties about safety and trust. Beyond the psychology of the clown figure, the panic was fueled by the very real and serious moral panic of the era regarding stranger danger and missing children. The late 1970s and early 80s were a time when high-profile cases of abducted children, like that of Etten Patz in New York City, were receiving unprecedented national attention. This created a climate of heightened vigilance and fear. The phantom clown stories provided a simple, monstrous explanation for a complex and terrifying reality. It was easier to imagine a band of evil clowns than to grapple with the more mundane, yet far more common, dangers children actually faced. The legend served as a kind of cultural lightning rod, channeling diffused societal fears into a specific, shareable, and combatable narrative. Ultimately, the phantom clown scare of 1981 faded as quickly as it began. Without any substantive evidence or victims, the media moved on, and the police departments closed their investigations. But the legend never truly died. It has resurfaced periodically over the decades, most notably in the creepy clown sightings of 2016, which followed an almost identical pattern of social media-fueled reports and copycat pranks. The enduring power of this story lies in its perfect storm of elements, a universally recognized yet ambivalent symbol, a vulnerable target, and a communication system ready to spread the fear. It demonstrates that the strangest small-town legends aren't always about ghosts or monsters. Sometimes the most potent legends are born from the fears we already carry inside, fears that can, under the right conditions, materialize into a phantom with a painted face, waiting in a van just around the corner. While the phantom clown panic was a legend born from societal anxiety, our next destination takes us to a phenomenon etched into the very landscape itself, a mystery of light and atmosphere that has captivated all who witness it. We travel now to the vast, high desert of West Texas, to the remote town of Marfa, population barely 2,000. Here, far from the glow of city lights, under a canopy of brilliant stars, an unexplained spectacle plays out night after night. These are the Marfa lights, flickering orbs that dance and dart across the Mitchell Flat, a display so persistent and puzzling that it has become one of America's most enduring natural mysteries. The history of these mysterious lights stretches back long before the town of Marfa even existed. Apache and other Native American tribes had legends about the lights, often interpreting them as fallen stars or the spirits of ancestors. The first documented account from settlers comes from 1883, when a young cowhand named Robert Reed Ellison was driving cattle across the prairie. He saw a flickering light in the distance and, assuming it was the campfire of an Apache encampment, rode cautiously toward it. To his astonishment, the light seemed to recede as he approached, and then it simply vanished. He reported the strange event, and other ranchers in the area came forward with their own stories of the ghostly lights that would appear and disappear without explanation. For decades, these sightings remained local folklore, a curious oddity of the Chinati Mountains. The lights were given various names by ranchers: ghost lights, Foo Fighters, and were largely considered a quirky fact of life in the high desert. It wasn't until World War II that the Marfa lights gained national attention. A group of Army pilots training at the nearby Marfa Army Airfield reported seeing the lights while on nighttime maneuvers. Intrigued and suspecting they might be signals from enemy operatives, the military launched an official investigation. After extensive observation, they concluded the lights were not of human origin, but they could not determine what they were. This official acknowledgement from the military, coupled with its inability to provide an answer, catapulted the lights from a local tale into a full-blown mystery. In the post-war years, as road travel became more common, the Texas Highway Department even erected an official viewing area on U.S. Route 90, cementing the Marfa light status as a must-see roadside attraction for travelers seeking a glimpse of the unexplained. So what are these elusive lights? Witnesses describe them with remarkable consistency. They appear as bright, tennis ball-sized orbs, usually white, yellow, orange, or red. They can appear singly or in groups, hovering, splitting apart, merging, darting horizontally, or fading in and out of existence. Their behavior is the key to the mystery. They don't behave like car headlights or any other mundane source. This has, of course, led to a wealth of theories. The most popular supernatural explanation is that they are ghost lights, perhaps the spirits of conquistadors searching for lost gold, or the lanterns of cowboys who met their end on the trail. UFO enthusiasts have long pointed to Marfa as a hotspot, suggesting the lights are extraterrestrial spacecraft studying our remote planet. The allure of these theories is undeniable, offering a romantic or thrilling answer to a visually stunning phenomenon. Science, however, has offered several compelling, if less glamorous, explanations. The most prominent theory involves a complex atmospheric phenomenon known as a temperature inversion. The Marfa Plateau sits at a high altitude, nearly 5,000 feet above sea level. On clear, cool nights, a layer of cold, dense air can become trapped near the ground beneath a layer of warmer air. This inversion layer can act like a lens, bending and refracting light from sources far beyond the horizon. Skeptics argue that the Marfa lights are simply the headlights of cars traveling on U.S. Route 67, which lies 35 miles to the south. Under the right atmospheric conditions, this refracted light could create the appearance of glowing, dancing orbs that seem to be much closer than they actually are. This would explain why the lights seem to appear and disappear erratically, as they are dependent on the specific and shifting conditions of the air itself. Another scientific investigation pointed to another potential source: campfires. In 2008, a team from Texas State University set up observation posts with high-powered cameras and telescopes. After extensive study, they concluded that almost all of the light phenomena they observed could be attributed to distant vehicle headlights on two specific highways, or to campfires and lanterns. Yet, even this thorough investigation left a small percentage of sightings unexplained, lights that behaved in ways that didn't align with known sources. This sliver of uncertainty is the lifeblood of the legend. It allows believers to hold on to the mystery, arguing that science has explained the majority of imitations, but not the true, original Marfa lights that have been reported for over a century, long before the existence of paved highways and automobile traffic. Regardless of their ultimate origin, the cultural impact of the lights on the town of Marfa is undeniable and transformative. What was once a fading ranching community has reinvented itself around this ethereal attraction. The Marfa lights have become the centerpiece of the local economy, drawing thousands of tourists each year who spend the evening at the viewing platform, hoping for a personal encounter with the unknown. The town has leaned fully into its quirky, mysterious reputation, becoming a surprising hub for minimalist art thanks to the influence of artist Donald Judd, who established a major foundation there. This combination of high art and high strangeness has created a uniquely atmospheric destination. The mystery of the lights is no longer just a paranormal question, it is an integral part of the town's identity, a symbol of the beauty and enigma of the West Texas desert. The lights represent a perfect harmony between a natural wonder and the human imagination, a phenomenon that invites you to look into the darkness and decide for yourself what is really out there. Yet, for every legend rooted in natural phenomenon or fleeting panic, there are those that feel terrifyingly close, a creature of flesh and blood that could be lurking just beyond the tree line. This brings us to the rural backroads of Walworth County, Wisconsin, and a series of encounters in the 1990s that gave rise to one of the most visceral and compelling cryptid legends of the modern era, the Beast of Bray Road. Unlike the ethereal orbs of Marfa, this was not a distant light in the sky. Witnesses described a tangible, muscular creature, a horrifying hybrid of man and wolf that walked upright on two legs along the gravel shoulders of a quiet country lane. The initial wave of sightings began in the late 1980s and peaked in the early 90s, centered on the stretch of Bray Road just outside the small city of Elkhorn. The accounts were remarkably consistent, painting a picture of a creature that defied easy categorization. It was often described as between 6 and 7 feet tall, covered in coarse, brownish-gray fur, with a robust, muscular build reminiscent of a powerful athlete. Its head was said to be distinctly canine or wolf-like, with pointed ears, a pronounced snout, and glowing yellow or green eyes that shone in the darkness. But the most chilling detail, the one that separated it from a simple bear or large dog, was its gait. Multiple witnesses reported seeing it not on all fours, but standing and walking erect like a man. Some described its arms as long and ape-like, ending in claws, and a few even claimed it possessed a terrifying intelligence in its gaze. One of the most credible accounts came from a woman named Dorothy Gibson. In 1989, while driving down Bray Road at dusk, her car's headlights illuminated a large, dark figure crouching in the middle of the road. As she slowed down, the creature stood up on its hind legs, turned to look directly at her, and then loped off into a nearby cornfield with an unsettling, bipedal run. Another witness, a seasonal farm worker, reported a similar encounter, adding that the beast seemed to be digging in the dirt before it stood and fixed him with an unnervingly intelligent stare. The story gained widespread attention largely due to the diligent work of local journalist Linda Godfrey, who was a reporter for the Walworth County Week newspaper at the time. In December 1991, she broke the story after interviewing several witnesses who had been too frightened or embarrassed to come forward. Her investigative reporting, which treated the witnesses with respect and seriousness rather than mockery, legitimized the phenomenon and encouraged others to share their experiences. Godfrey's subsequent books like The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing Wisconsin's Werewolf, delved deeper, connecting the dots between the modern sightings and a much older tapestry of folklore. She discovered that the descriptions of the beast bore a striking resemblance to legends found in the traditions of the nearby Ho-Chunk Nation and other Algonquian-speaking tribes. These were not stories of European-style werewolves who are humans cursed to transform under a full moon, but of something perhaps more ancient and fearsome, the Shunka-Warakin, a dog-like creature, or even concepts related to the Skinwalker, a powerful and malevolent witch or shapeshifter capable of taking animal form. This connection to indigenous lore adds a profound layer of depth and authenticity to the Bray Road legend. It suggests that what people were witnessing in the 1990s was not an isolated anomaly, but rather the latest chapter in a centuries-old narrative of a creature that has always inhabited that specific landscape. The Ho-Chunk legends speak of a being that is both physical and spiritual, a guardian of certain places or a manifestation of dark magic. This framing moves the beast beyond a simple monster sighting and into the realm of a place-specific entity, a part of the cultural and spiritual ecology of southern Wisconsin. It raises the possibility that this creature, whatever its true nature, has been a part of the local consciousness long before the paved road was even named. Faced with this sudden and bizarre notoriety, the community of Elkhorn had a decision to make, much like Point Pleasant and Bishopville before them. Rather than dismiss the stories as an embarrassment, they chose to embrace the legend with a characteristic Midwestern blend of pragmatism and good humor. The Beast of Bray Road became an unofficial mascot. Local businesses began selling Beast of Bray Road t-shirts, stickers, and memorabilia. The creature was featured in local parades, sometimes represented by a creatively designed float. The area even began hosting an annual Beast of Bray Road festival, complete with guest speakers, vendor booths, and family-friendly activities, turning a potential source of fear into a unique community gathering and a minor tourist attraction. This embrace demonstrates a fascinating pattern in American small-town life: the ability to take the strange and the frightening and weave it into the fabric of local identity, creating a shared story that binds the community together. Skeptics, of course, offer more terrestrial explanations. The most common theory is that witnesses misidentified a large, known animal, such as a black bear suffering from mange, which can give its skin a hairless, grotesque appearance, or an unusually large wolf or dog walking on its hind legs for a brief moment. Others suggest the power of suggestion played a role. Once the first story was published in the local paper, it primed residents to interpret any large, dark shape on Bray Road as the legendary beast. However, the sheer number of consistent, independent reports from credible individuals, many of whom had no knowledge of the legend before their encounter, makes a simple case of mass misidentification difficult to fully accept. The Beast of Bray Road endures because it occupies a compelling middle ground. It feels more tangible and grounded than a ghost, yet more mysterious and intelligent than a mere animal. It is a legend born not in the distant past, but within living memory on a road that anyone can drive down today, which makes the possibility of its existence just plausible enough to send a shiver down your spine long after the streetlights of Elkhorn have faded into the darkness behind you. But if the Beast of Bray Road feels like a modern legend, our journey now takes us to the heart of one of America's oldest and most deeply rooted monster tales. We travel east to the sprawling million-acre wilderness of southern New Jersey known as the Pine Barrens. This is a unique and eerie landscape of dense, stunted pine forests, dark, tea-colored waterways, and vast, sandy stretches that have remained largely untouched for centuries. And within this isolated realm, a legend has festered and grown for over 250 years, a story so bizarre it has become synonymous with the region itself. This is the legend of the Jersey Devil, a creature whose terrifying presence has profoundly shaped the small communities that border its supposed domain. The origin of the devil is a story born from a curse, a tale that dates back to the 1700s in the small settlement of Leeds Point. As the legend goes, a local woman named Mother Leeds already had 12 children. Upon discovering she was pregnant with her 13th, she raised her hands to the sky in a moment of frustration and despair, cursing the unborn child and proclaiming, "Let this one be a devil." The night of the birth was marked by a violent storm, and when the child arrived, it appeared normal at first, but within moments, the infant underwent a horrifying transformation. It grew leathery wings like a bat, the head of a horse, the cloven hooves of a goat, and a long, forked tail. It let out a terrifying screech, killed the midwife, and then flew up and out of the chimney, disappearing into the tempestuous darkness of the pines. This chilling birth narrative provides a foundational tragedy, explaining the creature's existence as a cursed being, rejected by its own mother and forever bound to the wilderness. While sightings have been reported for generations, the legend truly exploded into a full-blown regional panic in January of 1909. For one incredible week, the Jersey Devil seemed to be everywhere at once. It began with a series of bizarre, cloven hoof prints found in the snow in and around the town of Woodbury, prints that mysteriously went up walls and across rooftops. Then the sightings began pouring in from all over South Jersey and even into neighboring Pennsylvania and Delaware. A trolley car in Camden was reportedly attacked by a flying creature. A social club in Bristol allegedly found a mysterious, unidentifiable animal trapped in their clubhouse. Schools in Burlington and other towns were closed down, and factories kept their workers inside during night shifts, all out of fear of the creature. Vigilante groups armed themselves and patrolled the streets, while newspapers breathlessly reported every supposed encounter, whipping the public into a frenzy. This week-long hysteria, witnessed by thousands of people from all walks of life, cemented the Jersey Devil's place not as a mere folktale, but as a tangible threat in the minds of an entire population. For the small towns nestled on the edge of the Pine Barrens, the devil is more than just a monster. It is an inseparable part of their identity and a subtle engine of their economy. While you won't find people boarding up their windows in fear today, the legend is a constant, low-level presence. Local businesses proudly bear its name. The Jersey Devil is featured on restaurant signs, brewery logos, and souvenir shop trinkets. The creature is the official mascot of a minor league hockey team, a symbol of local pride and tenacity. This embrace serves a dual purpose. It transforms a source of potential fear into a unique cultural asset, drawing curious tourists and cryptid enthusiasts into diners and gift shops that might otherwise be bypassed. But on a deeper level, the legend acts as a permanent, whispered warning about the wilderness that surrounds these communities. The Pine Barrens are a genuinely vast and disorienting place, easy to get lost in, with a history of harboring outlaws and recluses. The story of the Jersey Devil provides a mythical explanation for the unease one might feel when the dense pines grow dark, a name for the strange noises heard in the night, a reason to perhaps not wander too far from the marked trail. The endurance of the Jersey Devil legend speaks to its powerful versatility. It can be interpreted as a classic American monster, a unique chimera of animal parts that stalks the woods. It can be seen as a ghost story, the cursed spirit of a wronged child forever seeking revenge. For some, it's a fascinating piece of cryptozoology, a possibly undiscovered species clinging to existence in an inaccessible wilderness. And for others, it functions as a pure piece of folklore, a cautionary tale that has been told and retold for so long it has become a fundamental truth of the region. This ability to be all things to all people is the secret to its longevity. The Jersey Devil is not just a creature, it is the living, breathing spirit of the Pine Barrens themselves, ancient, mysterious, and forever wild, a testament to the power of a story to define a place and the people who call it home. While the Pine Barrens hold their ancient curse, our journey now leads us to a different kind of mystery, one that dances on the border between Oklahoma and Missouri, in a place where the night sky itself seems to come alive. Just as the vast desert around Marfa sets the stage for its enigmatic orbs, the wooded, hilly terrain near the tiny community of Hornet, Missouri, provides the perfect eerie backdrop for another legendary light phenomenon. This is the story of the Hornet Spooklight, also known far and wide as the Joplin Spooklight, a mysterious ball of fire that has been performing its silent, bouncing ballet for well over a century, defying every attempt at a simple explanation. The experience of seeking out the spooklight is a ritual in itself. To have a chance of seeing it, you must travel to a specific, isolated stretch of country road now officially named, appropriately, Spooklight Road. This narrow paved lane cuts through dense forest in a remote area about 12 miles southwest of Joplin. The tradition, passed down through generations, is to park your car at a designated pull-off, turn off your headlights, and simply wait, your eyes fixed eastward down the road as it dips into a valley. The darkness here is profound, broken only by the sounds of the rural night. and then, if you're lucky, it appears. Witnesses describe it as a single bright ball of light, often glowing with an orange, white, or reddish hue, roughly the size of a baseball or a basketball. It doesn't merely hover, it moves with a distinct, intelligent-seeming behavior. It bounces, sometimes high, sometimes low, along the road or the distant tree line. It can split into two or more smaller lights, dance side to side, or even approach observers before rapidly retreating or vanishing entirely. This isn't a distant, static star, it's an active, playful, and utterly baffling performance. As with any enduring mystery, the spook light has accumulated a rich tapestry of folklore to explain its origin, with each tale reflecting the fears and history of the people who told it. One of the oldest and most poignant legends attributes the light to the ghost of two young quapaw lovers. As the story goes, the couple, forbidden from being together, met for a secret elopement in these very hills. Tragically, they became lost, and the young man fell from a cliff to his death. His distraught beloved is said to have spent the rest of her nights searching for him with a lantern, and the spook light is the eternal glow of her never-ending quest. Another common tale, rooted in the region's industrial history, tells of a railroad brakeman who was decapitated in a gruesome accident many decades ago. The light is said to be his ghost, swinging his lantern as he endlessly searches the tracks for his lost head. These tragic, human-scale stories give the phenomenon a sorrowful soul, connecting it to specific moments of loss that resonate deeply with the listener. The mystery of the light has proven so persistent that it has attracted serious scientific investigation, including one of the most famous and ultimately inconclusive studies by the United States Army. In 1946, a team from the Army Corps of Engineers descended upon the area, determined to solve the puzzle once and for all. They subjected the spook light to rigorous observation and analysis, considering and systematically ruling out a long list of potential causes. They investigated whether it could be the result of swamp gas, though the area isn't a swamp. They checked for phosphorescent minerals or radioactive deposits, finding none. They even considered the possibility of it being a reflection from the distant headlights of cars on Highway 66. Their final report, however, was a stunning admission of defeat. They concluded that the light was a mysterious phenomenon of unknown origin, a phrase that has fueled the legend for decades. Later, more localized investigations often point to a phenomenon called refraction, where headlights from cars on a busy stretch of Interstate 44, many miles away, are bent and magnified by layers of air at different temperatures, creating the illusion of a nearby light. This theory is scientifically plausible, yet it fails to satisfy many longtime observers who note that the spook light was being reported long before the invention of the automobile, when the only lights at night would have been from candles and lanterns. This gap between historical record and modern explanation is the heart of the legend's endurance. The spook light is more than just a curious light, it is a fixture of local culture. For the residents of the small towns in the area, it is a point of quirky pride, a natural wonder that is uniquely theirs. It has been a classic destination for teenage dates and late-night dares for over 100 years, a rite of passage that connects each new generation to the one before it. The very persistence of the phenomenon, witnessed by countless credible people including sheriffs, engineers, and soldiers, elevates it beyond a simple ghost story. It becomes a shared experience, a puzzle that the community owns. The spook light doesn't threaten like the Jersey Devil or the Beast of Bray Road. Instead, it invites curiosity. It represents a gentle, persistent mystery, a reminder that even in our modern, explained world, there are still pockets of wonder that defy our understanding, glowing quietly on a dark country road, waiting for the next carload of curious souls to pull over and watch. But if the Hornet spook light is a mystery of the natural world, our next legend is one of a deeply personal and unsettling kind of haunting, centered on a single, inanimate object that seems to pulse with a malevolent life of its own. We travel now to the very tip of Florida, to the sun-drenched, quirky island city of Key West. Here, amidst the vibrant architecture and laid-back atmosphere, resides what is perhaps America's most famous and most feared haunted doll. His name is Robert, and his story is a chilling tapestry of childhood innocence corrupted, a tale that has grown so powerful it has spawned its own set of rules for anyone daring enough to encounter him. The story begins at the turn of the 20th century with a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto, who lived in a grand, Victorian mansion at the corner of Eaton and Simonton Streets, a home now known as the Artist House. Robert, who went by the nickname Gene, was a creative and imaginative child. Around 1904, according to the most common version of the legend, a maid who worked for the Otto family presented the boy with a gift. She was said to be from the Bahamas and practiced a form of folk magic, and she may have given the doll to young Gene as an act of revenge after being fired by his parents. The doll itself was a striking figure, a 3-foot-tall straw-filled doll dressed in a crisp white sailor suit, its face handcrafted with delicate features and wide, glass eyes. Gene was instantly captivated. He named the doll after himself, Robert. It wasn't long before strange occurrences began to permeate the Otto household. Gene's parents would hear their son having animated conversations in his room, but when they listened at the door, they heard 2 distinct voices. One was their son's, and the other was a deeper, gruffer voice they did not recognize. They would often find furniture overturned in Gene's room, with the boy insisting Robert did it. Neighbors reported seeing the doll moving from window to window in the nursery when the family was out. The stories grew even darker. Some accounts claim the doll was occasionally found in a different room than where it was left, its expression seemingly changed to a sinister grin. Others whispered that they could hear the faint sound of maniacal laughter echoing from the nursery. For decades, Robert the doll resided in the attic of the Otto home, a silent, watching presence that even the adults in the family treated with a wary respect. After Gene Otto grew up, became a successful painter, and inherited the home, he and his wife moved back in. Astonishingly, the artist, now an adult, still kept the doll, seemingly still under its strange influence. He allegedly kept Robert in his studio, and guests would report that the doll would sometimes be found in a different chair, or that its head would turn to follow them as they moved about the room. The legend solidified after Gene's death, and the house changed hands. The new owners, a family named the Potters, had a young daughter who was terrified of the doll, claiming it would whisper threats to her and that she saw it walking through the halls at night. The final straw came when the girl was found screaming in her room, which had been virtually destroyed, with furniture ripped apart, and she swore, just as Gene Otto had decades before, that Robert did it. It was after this incident that the doll was donated to the Fort East Martello Museum, where it resides today. At the museum, Robert's legend didn't fade, it intensified and formalized. He is now the star attraction, displayed in a custom-made glass case, still wearing his original sailor suit, but the most fascinating aspect of his modern fame is the ritual that has grown up around him. Visitors who wish to take Robert's photograph must first ask his permission. It is a serious tradition, not a playful gimmick. The museum staff will politely instruct you to stand before the case and say aloud, "Hello, Robert, may I please take your picture?" If you feel a sense of permission, a feeling, a nod, or simply no negative sensation, you may proceed. However, if you fail to ask, or if Robert is in a foul mood that day, the consequences are said to be dire. The legend is filled with accounts of cameras malfunctioning, batteries draining instantly, or photos developing with strange streaks, shadows, or simply turning out blank. More seriously, those who have disrespected Robert have reported a string of bad luck afterward, car troubles, relationship problems, illness, or financial hardship, all attributed to the doll's vengeful curse. The museum's guest book is a testament to the power of this belief. It is filled with letters from previous visitors who failed to ask permission, detailing the misfortunes that befell them after their visit, often accompanied by apologies and pleas for Robert's forgiveness. This practice of correspondence has become so common that the museum has assigned Robert his own email address to handle the volume of apologies and requests sent from around the world. This ongoing interaction between the public and the doll is unique. It's a living legend that is actively being written by every new visitor who participates in the ritual, blurring the line between superstition and a shared, collective experience. The legend of Robert the Doll endures because it taps into a primal fear of the uncanny, the idea that a child's toy, a symbol of comfort and innocence, could be a vessel for something ancient and malicious. It's a story that challenges our perception of reality, suggesting that objects can absorb the emotions and energies of those who own them, and that some secrets, like the true nature of a doll in a sailor suit, are best left undisturbed. From the intimate, cursed object of Robert the Doll, we now shift our focus to a legend on an entirely different scale, a story not of a single haunted item, but of an entire town slowly consumed by an invisible, unstoppable force. Our journey takes us to the rugged coal country of Pennsylvania, to a place that has become a global symbol of post-industrial decay and eerie abandonment, Centralia. Here, the legend was not born from folklore or a ghost story, but from a very real, very tangible catastrophe that began with a simple act of civic cleanup and ignited a fire that would still be burning more than 6 decades later. The story of Centralia's demise starts not with a bang, but with a routine preparation for the town's Memorial Day festivities in 1962. The local landfill, an abandoned strip mine pit, needed to be cleared of unsightly trash. The standard procedure at the time was to set a controlled fire to burn away the debris, a common practice in many coal region towns. On May 27th, firefighters set the dump ablaze. The fire did its job, but it also found its way into a hidden network of old, exposed coal seams running beneath the town. No one could have predicted that this routine burn would tap into an unimaginable fuel source, a vast underground labyrinth of anthracite coal, some of the most efficient fuel on Earth. The fire sank deep into the earth, following the coal veins like highways, and became impossible to extinguish with the methods available. Attempts to douse it with water or dig it out failed miserably. They only provided more oxygen, feeding the beast they were trying to kill. The fire had taken hold, and Centralia was living on top of a ticking time bomb. For nearly 2 decades, life in Centralia continued with a growing sense of unease. The first undeniable signs of the danger below emerged in the 1970s. Residents began reporting that their basement walls were hot to the touch. Homegrown vegetables in backyard gardens would wither and die from the intense heat rising through the soil. But the most terrifying warning came in 1981, when a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was playing in his backyard, and the ground literally gave way beneath him. He fell into a sinkhole that suddenly opened up, a pit that was not just empty, but filled with lethal, superheated steam and carbon monoxide. He only survived by clinging to exposed tree roots until his cousin managed to pull him to safety. The sinkhole was a direct vent to the inferno below, and it was a chilling demonstration that the ground everyone walked on was fundamentally unstable. The incident became a national news story and finally forced the federal government to take drastic action. After years of studies and debates, the conclusion was inescapable. Centralia was no longer safe for human habitation. A massive buyout program was initiated, and the vast majority of the town's more than 1,000 residents were relocated, their homes demolished. By the 21st century, only a handful of holdouts remained in a landscape of empty streets and overgrown foundations. Visiting Centralia today is an experience unlike any other. The town is a hauntingly beautiful monument to abandonment. Where neat rows of houses once stood, there are now fields of wildflowers and grasses punctuated by the occasional concrete step or fragment of a foundation. The most famous landmark is the Graffiti Highway, a long section of Route 61 that was permanently closed after massive cracks and buckles rendered it unusable. Over the years, it has become a sprawling canvas for visitors, covered in thousands of layers of brightly colored spray paint, a vibrant and surreal contrast to the silent, green hills surrounding it. But the true eeriness of Centralia is not just in what you see, but in what you feel and smell. In certain areas, especially in the winter, thin plumes of white smoke and steam still curl up from fissures in the ground, rising from the graveyard like silence of the fields. The air carries a faint, acrid smell of sulfur, a constant, sensory reminder that beneath your feet, a fire continues to burn with enough fuel to last for another 250 years. It's a landscape that feels both dead and alive, a place where the earth itself is breathing a toxic, heated breath. The profound and eerie atmosphere of Centralia made it the perfect inspiration for one of the most iconic horror settings in modern entertainment, the town of Silent Hill. The creators of the seminal video game series and the subsequent films drew direct inspiration from the real-life phenomena of the Pennsylvania town. They translated the rising smoke into a perpetual, choking fog that obscures the player's vision, creating a constant state of dread and uncertainty. The concept of the town being fundamentally corrupted from below, a place where reality itself could shift into a rust-blood-stained otherworld, mirrors the literal instability of Centralia's ground. The sense of a community erased, its memories and tragedies lingering in the empty spaces, is a central theme in both the real and the fictional towns. Centralia provided a blueprint for a new kind of horror, not one based on ghosts or monsters, but on the psychological terror of a poisoned environment, a place that is actively hostile to life, where the very ground you walk on wants to swallow you whole. This cultural impact has cemented Centralia's legend far beyond the borders of Pennsylvania, turning it into a globally recognized icon of apocalyptic decay. Yet, the story of Centralia is more than just a spooky tale or a cinematic muse. It is a profound and tragic lesson in human fallibility and the long-term consequences of our industrial past. The fire serves as a stark metaphor for problems we ignore until it is too late to contain them. It speaks to the fragility of our communities in the face of slow-moving, unstoppable forces, whether they are environmental, economic, or social. The fate of the town is a sobering reminder of the power of the natural world, which can reclaim a bustling community in a matter of decades, leaving almost no trace behind. For the few remaining residents who have chosen to stay, Centralia is not a ghost town, it is their home, a place filled with memories that they refuse to surrender to the fire. Their presence adds a deeply human layer to the legend, a testament to stubbornness and attachment to place that defies even a subterranean inferno. The legend of Centralia endures because it is all too real. A slow-motion disaster still unfolding, a quiet, smoking battlefield where human history is gradually being erased by the relentless fire below. From the slow-burning, earth-shattering terror of Centralia, we turn now to a legend that is far more intimate, a story of personal loss that has become one of the most common and haunting archetypes in American folklore. This is the legend of the Crybaby Bridge, a tale so pervasive that you can find a version of it in nearly every state, always centered on a lonely, isolated overpass spanning a creek or a ravine on the outskirts of a forgotten town. One of the most iconic examples can be found in the quiet community of Clintonville, Ohio, where a specific concrete bridge on Stream Road has become a magnet for those seeking a ghostly encounter. The story behind the Clintonville Bridge, like so many of its kind, is a heartbreaking tragedy. As the legend goes, decades ago, a young mother, often described as unwed or suffering from deep despair, found herself at the end of a rope. In a fit of madness or overwhelming grief, she came to this bridge one stormy night and threw her infant child into the rushing waters below before leaping to her own death. The details vary with each telling. Sometimes she was fleeing an abusive husband, other times she was shunned by her family, but the core tragedy remains the same, a life cut short and a mother's love twisted into an act of ultimate desperation. It is this foundation of profound human sorrow that gives the Crybaby Bridge legend its enduring power and emotional weight. The phenomenon experienced by visitors is what brings the legend to life. Those who venture to the bridge after dark, often as a teenage dare or a paranormal investigation, report a series of unsettling occurrences. The most common is the sound itself, the faint, unmistakable cry of a baby, seeming to drift up from the water under the bridge or from the dense woods surrounding it. Others claim that if you stop your car on the bridge, turn off the engine, and sprinkle baby powder on the back bumper or trunk, tiny, ghostly handprints will appear in the powder upon inspection. Some versions of the ritual involve honking the car horn 3 times or calling out the mother's name to summon her spirit. The most chilling accounts tell of a ghostly, spectral woman who can be seen wandering the bridge, eternally searching for her lost child, her form illuminated for a moment in the headlights before vanishing into the night. What makes the Crybaby Bridge archetype so fascinating is its incredible adaptability. While the Clintonville story is specific, you can travel to a Crybaby Bridge in Alabama and hear a tale of a school bus crash. In Texas, the story might involve a pioneer family ambushed by bandits. The location is always a bridge, a liminal space that symbolizes a crossing, a transition between two states, making it a perfect setting for a ghost story. The story effortlessly molds itself to fit the local history and landscape, absorbing the particular tragedies and fears of each community. This flexibility is the key to its nationwide success. It provides a ready-made narrative framework that any small town can adopt and make its own, using a local tragedy or simply the eerie ambience of a specific overpass to ground the legend in a tangible reality. The real function of these stories extends far beyond a simple scare. For generations of teenagers, a trip to the local Crybaby Bridge has been a classic rite of passage, a shared experience that creates bonds and memories. It's a safe way to explore fear and test one's courage within the controlled environment of a car surrounded by friends. On a deeper level, these legends often serve as cautionary tales. They can be subtle warnings about the dangers of unsafe bridges or reckless driving near waterways. More profoundly, they act as a cultural container for the universal, primal fear of losing a child. By giving this fear a specific location and a story, the legend makes an abstract terror manageable, something that can be visited, confronted, and then driven away from. It transforms a community's unspoken anxieties into a shared narrative, a ghost story that is passed down not just to frighten, but to silently reinforce the values of parental care and community vigilance. Ultimately, the enduring presence of the Crybaby Bridge across America speaks to a fundamental human need to find meaning in tragedy and to believe that the echoes of profound emotion can linger in a place long after the people are gone. Whether sparked by a real historical event or born entirely from the imagination, the legend persists because it resonates on a deeply emotional level. It's a story that requires no belief in aliens or mythical beasts. It only requires an understanding of loss. When you stand on that quiet bridge in Clintonville or any of its countless counterparts, listening to the wind in the trees, it's not difficult to imagine that the sound could be something more, that the weight of a past sorrow could still be palpable in the darkness, a whispered reminder of a tragedy that the town has never quite forgotten. Our journey now takes us from the quiet, tragic bridges of the countryside to the bustling outskirts of a major metropolis, proving that a powerful legend can take root anywhere, even in the shadow of a soaring city skyline. Just southwest of Chicago, in the suburban towns surrounding the massive Resurrection Cemetery, one of America's most famous and enduring ghost stories has been playing out for nearly a century. This is the tale of Resurrection Mary, a phantom hitchhiker whose story is a perfect blend of youthful romance, sudden tragedy, and an afterlife spent forever trying to find her way back home. The legend typically begins on a cold winter night, sometime during the 1930s. A young, beautiful woman with bright blue eyes and blonde hair, dressed in a striking white party dress, is dancing at the O. Henry Ballroom, a popular dance hall that was later renamed the Willowbrook Ballroom. She's a vision of innocence and joy, captivating everyone with her grace. As the story goes, she gets into an argument with her boyfriend at the ballroom, and in a fit of anger, she storms out, deciding to walk home alone along Archer Avenue, a major road that cuts through the surrounding suburbs. Tragically, on her journey home, she is struck and killed by a hit-and-run driver. Her grieving family lays her to rest in Resurrection Cemetery, not far from the very road where she lost her life. But Mary, it seems, was not ready to leave the dance floor behind. The encounters with Mary are remarkably consistent, reported by taxi drivers, truckers, and ordinary motorists for decades. A driver, often a young man, is traveling down Archer Avenue late at night when his headlights illuminate a lone figure hitchhiking on the side of the road. As he pulls over, he's struck by the girl's old-fashioned white dress and her ethereal beauty. She climbs into the car quietly, giving off a strange chill. When the driver asks where she's headed, she simply requests a ride along Archer Avenue, pointing toward Resurrection Cemetery. She is often described as quiet and sad, sometimes even seeming to be in a trance. As the car approaches the cemetery's iron gates, the girl suddenly says, "This is where I get out," or simply vanishes into thin air, leaving the driver startled and alone in the moving vehicle. Some versions of the story include the driver finding a small, cold spot on the seat where she was sitting, or even the lingering scent of perfume. One of the most compelling aspects of the legend is a specific, tangible piece of evidence that surfaced in 1939, giving the story a jolt of credibility. It was reported that the heavy, locked iron gates of Resurrection Cemetery were found badly damaged, with bars bent outward as if someone of immense strength had tried to force their way out from the inside. Crucially, pressed into the metal of one of the bars were what appeared to be the impressions of small, human hands. For believers, this was not just a coincidence. This was Mary herself, trapped inside the cemetery after a night of dancing, trying desperately to escape back to the world of the living. The story of the bent bars became a cornerstone of the legend, a physical manifestation of the ghost's struggle. The cemetery eventually replaced the gates, but the story of the handprints endures as one of the most chilling and concrete details in any American ghost story. Unlike many legends that fade into obscurity, the tale of Resurrection Mary has been kept alive by a continuous stream of sightings well into the modern era. In the 1970s, a cab driver named Jerry Pallas made headlines with a particularly detailed account. He picked up a girl matching Mary's description, who vanished from his backseat as he drove past the cemetery. He was so shaken that he reported the incident to the police, who found no one but took his story seriously. Another man claimed that after giving Mary a ride, he became so obsessed with finding out who she was that he visited the cemetery and found a headstone with the name Mary on it in a section for victims of the Iroquois theater fire of 1903, potentially linking the legend to a real historical tragedy. These ongoing encounters, often from seemingly credible and rational people, prevent the story from being dismissed as mere folklore. What makes the legend of Resurrection Mary so powerful and persistent is its potent emotional core. It's not a story of a vengeful spirit or a monstrous entity. It is a ghost story rooted in profound sadness and unfinished business. Mary is a sympathetic figure, a young woman whose life and joy were cut short in a moment of anger and misfortune. Her eternal cycle, dancing, fleeing, and forever seeking a ride home, is a poignant metaphor for a soul unable to move on, forever trapped at the moment of her untimely death. She represents the universal fear of dying young and the tragedy of potential left unfulfilled. For the communities around Chicago, Mary is more than a ghost. She is a local landmark, a story passed down through generations that connects them to a shared, if spectral, history. The legend adds a layer of mystery to the familiar landscape of Archer Avenue, turning an ordinary suburban thoroughfare into a haunted highway where the past is always present, and a lonely girl in a white dress might still be waiting for her final ride home. But what happens when the initial shock of a monster sighting fades and a community is left with a bizarre new reality? For the people of Bishopville, South Carolina, the legend of the Lizard Man presented an unexpected opportunity, demonstrating a remarkable talent small towns often have for turning potential infamy into a unique form of local pride. The creature that once inspired fear soon became an engine for the local economy, a transformation that began with simple, grassroots creativity. Almost immediately after Christopher Davis's story hit the news, local entrepreneurs saw a chance. T-shirt shops began printing designs featuring a menacing, scaly creature with glowing red eyes, with slogans like, "I survived the Lizard Man," or simply, "Bishopville, See, home of the Lizard Man." What started as a novelty quickly expanded into a full line of merchandise. You could buy Lizard Man coffee mugs for your morning brew, bumper stickers to warn tailgaters, and even homemade jars of lizard man jam from local craft fairs. This wasn't just about cashing in on a trend, it was a way for the community to collectively own the story, to say, this strange thing happened here, and it's a part of who we are now. The most significant evolution of this embrace is the annual Lizard Man Festival. What might have begun as a small gathering has grown into a dedicated event that draws visitors from across the region, effectively putting Bishopville on the map for a weekend each year. The festival is a classic small-town celebration, but with a wonderfully bizarre twist. The main street fills with vendor booths selling everything from official Lizard Man merchandise to local crafts and delicious southern food. There's a parade where the star attraction is often a giant, homemade float bearing the likeness of the creature itself, waving a clawed hand to the crowd. Families enjoy live music, children's activities, and contests like a Lizard Man Call competition where participants vie to recreate the creature's supposed screech. The festival embodies a spirit of good-natured fun, a communal wink that acknowledges the strangeness of their claim to fame while celebrating the unity and resilience it has fostered. This economic and cultural shift highlights a fascinating pattern we've seen emerge in several of these towns. A terrifying, inexplicable event creates a shared experience that over time is reframed not as a mark of shame, but as a point of distinction. The monster under the bed becomes a valuable community asset. In Bishopville's case, the Lizard Man gave this small, otherwise quiet farming community a powerful tool for economic development. It creates a reason for outsiders to visit, to spend money in local diners, gas stations, and shops. It generates free media attention that even a large tourism budget couldn't buy. But the impact runs deeper than dollars and cents. The legend gives Bishopville a unique identity in a world where many small towns struggle to stand out. It provides a story that residents can share with pride, a piece of folklore that connects generations. Grandparents who remember the initial scare in 1988 can now tell the story to their grandchildren while buying them a Lizard Man stuffed animal at the festival. The creature has been woven into the very fabric of the town's culture, transforming from a potential threat into a peculiar, beloved ambassador. While the initial wave of Mothman sightings ended after the Silver Bridge collapse, the legend was far from over. It was about to be catapulted from a regional mystery into an international phenomenon, thanks to the work of a controversial author and investigator named John Keel. In the years following the events, Keel immersed himself in the life of Point Pleasant, interviewing witnesses and documenting not just the creature itself, but a whole cascade of strange occurrences. His 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, presented a theory so expansive it fundamentally reshaped the narrative. Keel argued that the Mothman was not an isolated monster or even a singular omen, but merely one piece of a much larger, more bewildering puzzle. He wove together the sightings with reports of mysterious men in black intimidating witnesses, UFO activity in the Ohio Valley, and bizarre synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seem to defy probability. For Keel, the Mothman was an element of what he termed ultraterrestrial intelligence, a force that manipulates reality and plays with human perception using archetypes like the winged humanoid to provoke fear and belief. This interpretation transformed the story from a simple creature feature into a deep, philosophical inquiry into the nature of reality itself, suggesting that the true terror was not the red-eyed beast, but the unsettling possibility that our world is not what it seems. Decades later, Keel's complex book was adapted into a major Hollywood film, bringing the Mothman to a global audience that had never heard of Point Pleasant. The 2002 movie, The Mothman Prophecies, starring Richard Gere, took significant creative liberties, framing the story as a personal tragedy for a Washington, D.C. journalist drawn into the mystery after his wife's death. The film distilled Keel's sprawling theories into a chilling, atmospheric thriller, emphasizing the themes of precognition and inescapable fate. While it took dramatic license, its power lay in its tone, The movie masterfully captured the pervasive dread and psychological unraveling that Keel described, making the Mothman less a physical threat and more a harbinger of existential horror. The most haunting line from the film, delivered by the mysterious character Indrid Cold, "You have a bad connection to the future, it's already happened," perfectly encapsulates this idea of doomed foreknowledge. The movie's success did more than just entertain. It validated the legend for a new generation, adding a layer of cinematic gravitas and introducing the iconography of the Mothman to millions, ensuring the creature's place in the modern pop culture landscape. This enduring fame, fueled by both Keel's book and the film, has had a very real and lasting impact on the small town where it all began. Today, Point Pleasant doesn't just tolerate its famous monster, it has built a thriving modern identity around it. The annual Mothman Festival, which began as a small local gathering, now attracts tens of thousands of visitors each September. The streets fill with a unique blend of paranormal enthusiasts, curious tourists, and families enjoying a celebration that is both quirky and deeply sincere. The festival features guest speakers ranging from serious researchers to fellow cryptid experts, vendor booths overflowing with unique artwork and merchandise, and even a statue unveiling that has become a pilgrimage site. This embrace has created a sustainable tourist economy, with the Mothman Museum serving as the central archive, meticulously preserving newspaper clippings, eyewitness testimonies, and artifacts from the 1960s. Local businesses proudly display the Mothman's image, and the creature's silhouette is a symbol of civic pride, a testament to the town's resilience and ability to forge a positive future from a past marked by tragedy and fear. The legend continues to evolve in the hands of modern paranormal investigators and a new generation of storytellers. Cable television shows and podcasts regularly feature segments on Point Pleasant, each team bringing their own technology and methodologies to try and capture evidence of the unexplained. Where Keel used a notebook and a tape recorder, contemporary investigators deploy thermal cameras, electromagnetic field meters, and digital voice recorders to hunt for electronic voice phenomena in the abandoned TNT area. This constant cycle of reinvestigation keeps the story alive and dynamic, adding new layers of alleged evidence and personal experience to the existing lore. Furthermore, the Mothman has become a versatile icon, appearing in comic books, video games, and as a subject for countless online content creators. This constant reinterpretation ensures that the Mothman is no longer just a relic of the 1960s, but a living, evolving legend. It thrives because it offers something for everyone: a monster for horror fans, a cosmic mystery for ufologists, a symbol of community strength for the residents of Point Pleasant, and an enduring reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to be pondered forever in the flickering light of a silver screen or the quiet darkness of a river town. While the Sutton family's account is gripping in its consistency and sheer terror, such a bizarre event naturally invites a rigorous skeptical examination. The official investigation, after all, found no physical evidence of the creatures, leaving a void that has been filled with various attempts at rational explanation. Perhaps the most compelling and frequently cited theory involves not extraterrestrials, but a pair of highly territorial and admittedly intimidating native birds, the great horned owl. To understand how a family could mistake birds for otherworldly goblins, we need to step into the specific conditions of that August night in rural Kentucky. A great horned owl standing over 2 feet tall can present a formidable silhouette, especially when seen suddenly in the dim light, its prominent ear tufts giving it a horned or large-headed appearance. Their eyes, which can reflect light with a startling yellow or even reddish glow, might easily be interpreted as the piercing, unblinking gaze described by the witnesses. Crucially, these owls are fiercely defensive of their nests and young, and the Sutton farm, with its outbuildings and trees, could have been perceived as a threat to a nearby nest. An owl defending its territory will often perform a dramatic threat display, lowering its head, fluffing its feathers to appear larger, and swaying or bobbing. When shot at, its remarkable feathers are dense enough to sometimes deflect small caliber bullets, which could account for the metallic ping the family reported and the creature's apparent invulnerability. The family's state of mind is the other critical component. They were already on edge from Billy Ray Taylor's story of a UFO landing, when the owls, provoked by the initial commotion, began swooping silently down from the darkness to dive bomb the perceived intruders near their home. A classic feedback loop of fear could have taken hold. In the chaos, with adrenaline surging, the human brain strives to make sense of fragmented, terrifying stimuli, potentially constructing a coherent but entirely incorrect narrative of humanoid attackers. Within the field of ufology, the Kelly-Hopkinsville case holds a special and somewhat contentious place. It is often celebrated as a quintessential close encounter of the third kind, a reported event involving interaction with animated beings due to the number of witnesses and the prolonged nature of the event. However, it also presents significant challenges to the standard extraterrestrial hypothesis. The creature's behavior was oddly animalistic and seemingly illogical for an advanced technological species. They displayed no obvious technology, their attack was persistent but ineffective, and their appearance, silver, clawed, and large-eyed, didn't fit the emerging gray alien archetype that would later dominate UFO lore. Some ufologists have therefore proposed more nuanced interpretations. One suggests the beings were not biological entities, but rather biomechanical drones or probes, which would explain their resilience to gunfire and their seemingly single-minded, repetitive actions. Another, more speculative theory posits that the family did not encounter beings from another planet, but rather from another dimension or a parallel reality, intruding briefly into our own. This idea attempts to reconcile the creature's seemingly magical ability to appear and disappear with such ease. The case's enduring legacy in ufology is less about providing proof of aliens and more about highlighting the profound strangeness of such events, which often resist any single, neat categorization, pushing researchers to consider possibilities far beyond simple interstellar visitation. Beyond owls and aliens, other theories have been proposed over the decades, though they tend to be less widely accepted. The traveling circus hypothesis suggests that escaped monkeys, possibly wearing metallic costumes from a show, could have been the culprits. While this could account for the small, agile figures, it struggles to explain the sheer number of creatures reported, their apparent invulnerability, and the complete lack of any evidence of such an escape or the animals themselves in the following days. A more psychological explanation points to the possibility of a mass hallucination triggered by shared stress or even a toxic substance, such as carbon monoxide leaking from a faulty appliance or the ingestion of contaminated well water. Yet this seems unlikely given that all 11 witnesses, including children and adults, experienced the event simultaneously and independently corroborated each other's stories for hours on end, with no one suffering from the classic symptoms of poisoning afterward. What makes the Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter so uniquely frustrating and fascinating is that no single theory perfectly fits all the facts. The owl explanation is elegant and accounts for many details, but it requires us to believe that 11 people, including men familiar with firearms and the local wildlife, collectively misidentified a known bird for hours under sustained pressure. The extraterrestrial or interdimensional hypotheses, while thrilling, lack any physical evidence. The case therefore resides in a gray area, a permanent historical puzzle that serves as a masterclass in the difficulties of investigating high strangeness events. It forces us to confront the limitations of both conventional zoology and unconventional speculation, reminding us that sometimes the most enduring mysteries are those that offer clues pointing in multiple, contradictory directions at once. The pattern of outcasts haunting the wilderness, so vividly captured in the Melonheads legend, is a recurring archetype across America's rural landscape, reflecting a deep-seated anxiety about the untamed spaces just beyond our backyards. If we travel just a state away from the Melonheads' purported territory in Ohio, we encounter another bizarre resident of the Buckeye State's waterways, the Loveland frogmen. While the Melonheads are tragic figures of human origin, the frogmen of Loveland are something else entirely. Encounters described bipedal, frog-like humanoids, standing about 4 feet tall with leathery skin and distinct facial features. The most famous incident occurred in 1972 when a police officer reported seeing one of these creatures crouched by the side of the road, which then stood up and scrambled over a guardrail into the Little Miami River. The key difference here is the nature of the fear. The Melonheads inspire a fear of corrupted humanity, of what happens when people are pushed beyond the fringes of society. The Loveland frogmen, however, tap into a more primal, almost Lovecraftian dread of the non-human, suggesting that the ancient creeks and rivers might hide intelligences that are utterly alien to our own. Both legends, however, are rooted in the same isolated, liminal spaces, the dark woods and the murky riverbanks, that have always served as blank canvases for our deepest fears. Venturing further south, the legend of the Fouke monster, immortalized in the classic film The Legend of Boggy Creek, presents a more aggressive and bestial version of the feral human archetype. In the swampy lowlands of Arkansas, this creature, often described as a large, hairy, ape-like being, is said to terrorize the isolated communities along Boggy Creek. Unlike the potentially misunderstood Melonheads, the Boggy Creek monster is frequently portrayed as a direct physical threat, emitting a foul odor and being blamed for attacking livestock and even terrifying residents in their own homes. This legend is steeped in the specific atmosphere of the southern swamp, a place of oppressive humidity, tangled growth, and profound isolation. The fear it generates is less about social ostracization and more about the vulnerability of human habitation in the face of a raw, predatory wilderness. The monster becomes a personification of the swamp itself, ancient, powerful, and hostile to human intrusion. Where the Melonheads might be pitied, the Boggy Creek monster is something to be feared and defended against, illustrating how the same basic concept of a wild humanoid is adapted to reflect the unique character and history of its local environment. What connects these disparate legends, from the mutated children of Ohio to the frogmen of Loveland and the ape man of Arkansas, are powerful universal themes that resonate deeply within the American psyche. The most prominent is the fear of isolation itself. These stories almost exclusively originate in rural areas, on the edges of small towns, where the dark emptiness beyond the streetlights feels vast and impenetrable. The legend gives a name and a shape to the nameless unease that comes from living in such places, transforming the abstract fear of the unknown into a tangible, if mythical, creature. Furthermore, these tales often function as cautionary folklore, serving a practical purpose. The story of the Melonheads, for instance, naturally discourages teenagers from wandering too deep into potentially dangerous woodland areas. The legend of the Boggy Creek monster implicitly warns against venturing into the treacherous swamps after dark. By attaching a monster to a location, the community creates a narrative-based safety rule that is far more memorable and effective than a simple parental warning. Ultimately, these legends of feral humanoids reveal a profound ambivalence about wilderness and the past. They are often born from a distorted memory of real history, perhaps a family of recluses, a tragic fire at an institution, or simply the presence of a misunderstood animal. Over generations, these kernels of truth are woven into a richer tapestry, becoming a way for a community to process its own history and its relationship with the land it occupies. The Melonheads and their kin are more than just campfire tales. They are a fundamental part of America's folkloric tradition, a way of storytelling that helps us map our fears, define our boundaries, and make sense of the dark, silent spaces that still exist between our brightly lit towns. They remind us that the American landscape is not just a physical place, but a repository of stories, and that sometimes the most frightening monsters are the ones we create to explain the shadows we don't quite understand. Just when it seemed the phantom clown panic of the 1980s had faded into an odd footnote of American folklore, the painted faces returned with a vengeance, materializing not on the nightly news, but in the endless scroll of social media feeds. In the late summer of 2016, a new wave of sightings began, this time erupting first in the small towns of the American South. The initial reports trickled in from Greenville County, South Carolina, where residents began calling the police about individuals dressed in full clown regalia, white face paint, colorful wigs, and sometimes even red noses lurking in the shadows of apartment complexes, lingering near wooded areas, and most chillingly, attempting to lure children with whispers or the flash of a flashlight. The tree line after dark, the descriptions were eerily familiar, but the mechanism of transmission was entirely new, where the 1981 panic spread through newspapers and television reports over days and weeks. The 2016 resurgence exploded in real time. A single grainy photo or a panicked post on Facebook or Twitter from a small town in South Carolina could be seen, shared, and commented on by thousands within minutes, creating an instantaneous, nationwide echo chamber of fear. This digital wildfire quickly spread north and west, with Wisconsin becoming a major epicenter of the new hysteria. In the city of Kenosha and surrounding towns, the reports grew even more elaborate and menacing. Clowns were no longer just seen lurking, they were allegedly chasing people, brandishing knives, and even being spotted in groups, coordinating their movements. Schools across multiple states went into lockdown as a precaution after social media threats mentioned clown-related violence. Local police departments were inundated with calls, their resources stretched thin as they investigated countless reports, the vast majority of which led to nothing more than startled teenagers playing pranks or, in some cases, completely fabricated online hoaxes. The phenomenon showcased the terrifying power of the modern rumor mill. A fictional threat, amplified by the anonymity and reach of the internet, could create very real consequences, widespread panic, strained public services, and a palpable sense of dread in communities from coast to coast. The parallels to the 1981 outbreak were striking and deeply revealing. Both events began in small-town settings where close-knit communities and a strong sense of local identity can make a shared fear feel more immediate and personal. Both episodes centered on the same potent symbol, the clown, whose unsettling ambiguity makes it the perfect vessel for projected anxieties. And in both cases, the fear was rooted in the vulnerability of children, tapping into the timeless, primal concern of every parent. Yet, the 2016 panic differed in one crucial aspect: its scale and speed. The original Phantom Clowns were largely a regional, then national, news story. The 2016 clowns were a global internet meme almost overnight, with copycat sightings being reported not just across America, but in countries like Canada and the United Kingdom. This demonstrated that the legend had evolved. It was no longer just an American small-town story, but a viral archetype, a ready-made monster perfectly suited for the age of digital sharing and collective anxiety. Sociologists examining the two events side by side see a fascinating case study in how folklore adapts to new technology. The core narrative remained virtually unchanged, a malevolent clown threatening children, but the delivery system was revolutionized. In 1981, the story was broadcast from a few central sources, like local news stations, which provided a degree of gatekeeping, however sensationalized. In 2016, the story was democratized and decentralized, with every smartphone user a potential broadcaster. This lack of a central, authoritative narrative allowed the legend to mutate more rapidly and spread without the checks of traditional journalism. A creepy clown photo from one state could be easily repurposed with a new location tag, creating the illusion of a coordinated, cross-country invasion. The 2016 resurgence proved that some legends are not killed by skepticism and rational explanation. They simply go dormant, waiting for the right conditions. A new technology, a fresh wave of societal tension, to burst back into the public consciousness, their painted smiles wider and more sinister than ever. But this enduring appeal of the vanishing hotel story raises a fascinating question that folklorists often grapple with. Where does authentic folklore end, and what scholars sometimes call fakelore begin? Fakelore is not necessarily a derogatory term. It refers to stories that are invented or heavily commercialized, often presented as ancient tradition when they may have more recent, manufactured origins. This is where the legend of the vanishing hotel sits in a fascinating gray area. While the tale feels timeless, its specific connection to the real, historically verifiable Mount Whittier Hotel, which burned down in 1910, suggests it could be a classic example of a folklore generator, a tangible, dramatic event. The destruction of a beloved local landmark creates a vacuum of memory. Longing, the community, missing the grand hotel that once defined their landscape, begins to tell stories about it. Over time, through countless retellings, the simple memory of the hotel evolves into a supernatural narrative. The story gives people a way to keep the place alive in their collective imagination long after the physical structure is gone. It's less about deliberate deception and more about the natural, human process of myth-making, of transforming history into a story that carries deeper emotional meaning. From a psychological standpoint, the power of the vanishing hotel legend lies in its mastery of a concept known as the liminal space. A liminal space is a transitional or in-between place, a threshold. A mountaintop, especially one shrouded in fog, is a perfect literal and metaphorical liminal space, suspended between earth and sky. When a traveler is lost, cold, and disoriented in such a place, their mind is in a liminal state as well, teetering between hope and despair, clarity and confusion. In this psychologically vulnerable state, the brain is exceptionally receptive to suggestion and prone to filling in gaps with information from memory or deep-seated fears and desires. The idea of a mirage of salvation is not just poetic. It has a basis in the psychology of extreme stress. The desperate need for shelter and warmth could easily trigger a powerful hallucination, constructing the exact thing the hiker most craves: a warm, safe hotel. The mind, in a supreme act of self-preservation, projects a sanctuary drawn from stories heard or even from subconscious archetypes of comfort. Upon waking, safe but bewildered, the memory of this vivid, salvation-themed hallucination would feel utterly real, cementing itself as a genuine supernatural encounter. This also connects to the broader tradition of phantom buildings found in folklore across the world. The Vanishing Hotel is a close cousin to legends like the phantom lighthouses, said to guide doomed sailors away from rocky shores, only to disappear when needed most, or the stories of ghostly inns that appear to stagecoach travelers on deserted colonial roads. These tales always serve a dual purpose. On one hand, they act as ethereal landmarks, explaining strange lights or sounds in a pre-scientific world, but more profoundly, they are narrative embodiments of hope and betrayal. The building appears in a moment of dire need, offering the promise of safety and community, but its vanishing act reinforces a cruel lesson about the unpredictability of the world. It's a story that acknowledges the possibility of miracles while simultaneously warning that they cannot be relied upon. This duality makes the phantom building an incredibly resilient folkloric motif, perfectly capturing the human experience of grappling with a universe that is both potentially benevolent and fundamentally unreliable. Ultimately, whether the Vanishing Hotel of South Tamworth is a genuine supernatural occurrence, a psychological phenomenon born of exposure, or a beautifully crafted piece of folklore matters less than the function it serves. For the community, it transforms a historical tragedy, the loss of a grand hotel, to fire into an ongoing, magical mystery. It gives the landscape a soul and a story, turning a simple hike into a potential adventure where one might brush against the fabric of another time. For the individual, the legend taps into our deepest vulnerabilities and our most fervent hopes. It's a testament to the power of the human mind to create meaning and comfort, even or especially in the face of the cold, indifferent wilderness. The hotel vanishes, but the story remains, a permanent fixture on the map of the human imagination, forever offering shelter from the storm. What separates the Beast of Bray Road from a simple campfire story and elevates it into the realm of serious cryptozoological inquiry is the meticulous work of researchers who treated the phenomenon not as a joke, but as a genuine mystery waiting to be solved. At the forefront of this effort was Linda Godfrey, a local journalist for the Walworth County Week newspaper. When reports of a strange, wolf-like creature began circulating in the early 1990s, rather than dismissing them, she approached the witnesses with an open mind and a reporter's notebook. Her breakthrough came in December of 1991 when she published a detailed account based on interviews with multiple, seemingly credible individuals who had encountered the beast. Godfrey's reporting was groundbreaking because it gave the creature a name and a documented history, moving it from whispered rumor to a subject of public record. She didn't just collect stories, she cross-referenced details, noted the consistency in descriptions across different witnesses, and mapped the sightings, revealing a pattern centered on the rural roads and farmlands of Walworth County. Her subsequent books, most notably The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing Wisconsin's Werewolf, transformed her from a journalist into a primary chronicler of the legend, providing a comprehensive archive that continues to be the foundational text for anyone investigating the case. Her work demonstrated that the beast was more than a fleeting scare, it was a persistent anomaly with a growing body of eyewitness testimony. The compelling nature of these sightings inevitably leads to the search for a rational, terrestrial explanation, and skeptics have put forward a strong case for misidentification. The most plausible candidate is the American black bear, particularly one suffering from a severe case of sarcoptic mange. This parasitic skin condition causes most of the bear's fur to fall out, revealing a grayish, wrinkled, and leathery hide beneath. A hairless bear, standing on its hind legs to survey its surroundings or to intimidate a potential threat, would present a bizarre and frightening silhouette, tall, muscular, and utterly unfamiliar to most people who expect a bear to look, well, like a bear. Its movements might appear clumsy or unnatural, and its head, devoid of fur, could look disproportionately large and strangely canine. This theory elegantly accounts for many of the physical descriptions: the coarse, patchy fur, the large size, and the bipedal stance. Furthermore, Wisconsin has a healthy black bear population, making an encounter with one in the rural areas around Elkhorn entirely within the realm of possibility. For many scientists and skeptics, this explanation closes the case, attributing the legend to a combination of a rare but natural animal sighting and the powerful influence of suggestion once the story entered the local zeitgeist. However, the misidentification theory, while logical, struggles to fully explain the sheer volume and specificity of the accounts gathered by Godfrey and others. Witnesses repeatedly emphasized details that don't align perfectly with a mangy bear. They described a creature with a distinctly canine or wolf-like head, not the rounded ears and prominent snout of a bear. The beast was often reported as having unusually long, ape-like arms that hung down to its knees, a feature not characteristic of bears. Perhaps most intriguingly, many witnesses spoke of the creature's gait. It wasn't just seen standing upright momentarily, but was observed walking or even loping for considerable distances on two legs with a confident, purposeful motion. This sustained bipedalism is not a normal mode of travel for bears, which may stand briefly but primarily move on all fours. Additionally, several reports mentioned an unsettling intelligence in the creature's eyes, a sense of being observed and assessed by a thinking being rather than just being stared at by a startled animal. These nuanced details, consistently reported by people with no apparent motive to lie, introduce enough uncertainty to keep the mystery alive and fuel the belief that something truly unknown may still be roaming the Wisconsin countryside. This enduring ambiguity is precisely what makes the Beast of Bray Road such a compelling target for modern monster hunters. Cryptozoologists, armed with more technology than ever before, continue to visit the area, hoping to capture definitive proof. Their investigations now involve trail cameras strategically placed along deer trails and near reported sighting locations, sensitive audio equipment to record potential howls or vocalizations that don't match any known wildlife, and even drones equipped with thermal imaging cameras to scan the vast cornfields and woodlots from above. They look for physical evidence like casts of unusual footprints or tufts of hair that cannot be easily identified. For these investigators, the beast represents one of the most promising cryptids in North America because the sightings are relatively recent, the descriptions are highly consistent, and the environment it inhabits is accessible. The legend persists not because people are gullible, but because the reported evidence, while anecdotal, is stubbornly difficult to dismiss entirely. It sits in that fascinating gray area between known zoology and pure myth, a challenge to our confident assertion that we have cataloged every large creature sharing our landscape. The Beast of Bray Road, therefore, is more than a monster. It is a symbol of the possibility that wilderness, even in the American Midwest, can still hold secrets, and that the line between the impossible and the undiscovered may be thinner than we think. This persistent enigma, a perfect circle of sterile earth in the heart of a fertile forest, has not only captivated storytellers, but has also drawn the keen attention of scientists and curious investigators determined to pin down a rational cause. The most obvious starting point, of course, was the soil itself. Early theories speculated that the barrenness might be the result of a natural toxin, perhaps a high concentration of salt or some other mineral left behind by an ancient salt lick that would poison any plant trying to take root. To test this, samples were carefully taken from inside the circle and compared with soil gathered just a few feet away in the thriving woods. The results from these laboratory analyses were both definitive and deeply puzzling. Chemically, the soil from the cursed ground was virtually identical to the soil outside it. There were no elevated levels of salinity, no strange metallic compounds, no hidden poison that could account for the stark divide between life and death. This finding effectively ruled out a simple chemical explanation, pushing researchers to consider more physical causes. The leading scientific theory, and the one most widely accepted by skeptics, points to the extreme compaction of the Earth. The idea is that centuries of concentrated activity, whether from animals circling a long-vanished mineral deposit, or, more likely, from generations of curious humans repeatedly walking the same path, have pressed the soil particles together with such force that they've become as hard as brick. This severe compaction creates an environment where plant roots simply cannot penetrate the ground to access water and nutrients, and where delicate seedlings cannot push their way to the surface. It's a plausible explanation, one that can be observed on a smaller scale on well-worn footpaths in parks and forests. However, this theory, while logical, introduces its own set of questions. If it's just foot traffic, why has the circle remained so perfectly defined for so long without the vegetation slowly encroaching from the edges? Furthermore, the compaction theory does little to address the other, more interactive elements of the legend, the stories of objects left within the circle being mysteriously thrown out by morning, or the pervasive sense of unease reported by so many visitors. It explains the barrenness, but it doesn't explain the experience. This gap between the physical evidence and the anecdotal reports has inspired a host of more unconventional investigations. Amateur paranormal researchers have descended upon the site with electromagnetic field meters, hoping to detect unusual energy fluctuations. Some have claimed to record spikes in EMF readings, which they interpret as evidence of a spiritual or dimensional disturbance. Others have attempted overnight vigils, setting up motion-activated cameras and leaving various objects within the circle to test the legend of their disappearance. Accounts from these experiments are a mixed bag. Some investigators report a quiet night with nothing out of the ordinary, while others tell stories of equipment malfunctions, batteries draining inexplicably fast, and a profound, unsettling feeling of being watched that eventually drives them away. These personal testimonies, while not scientifically rigorous, add layers to the legend, suggesting that the phenomenon might be more complex than just hard-packed dirt. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the Devil's Tramping Ground is how it demonstrates the limitations of our current scientific tools when faced with a phenomenon that blends the physical with the psychological. Science can analyze soil composition and measure compaction, but it cannot yet quantify a feeling of dread or explain why a specific location would accumulate such a dense concentration of folklore. The circle exists as a tangible, physical fact that we can observe and test, yet its most compelling characteristics, the stories, the emotions, the alleged events, defy easy measurement. This has left the Devil's Tramping Ground in a unique category. It is not a ghost story with no physical evidence, nor is it a solved geological puzzle. It sits squarely in the middle, a place where a rational explanation exists but feels somehow incomplete, leaving just enough room for the imagination and perhaps for something older and stranger to continue its nightly pacing. Visiting that lonely stretch of Spook Light Road today is a ritual that connects modern curiosity seekers to a century of wonder, and the stories they bring back are as varied as they are compelling. One family from Tulsa, determined to witness the phenomenon for themselves, arrived just after sunset and parked their sedan at the designated pull-off. They sat in silence for nearly an hour, the children growing restless when the father pointed to a faint glow in the distant valley. What started as a single, shimmering orb soon began to bob and weave, splitting into two distinct lights that danced around each other in a silent, hypnotic ballet. The mother later described an overwhelming feeling of calm, not fear, as if they were privy to a private performance meant just for them. In stark contrast, a group of college students from Springfield reported a much more interactive encounter. After chanting the light's name and flashing their car headlights, they claimed a brilliant orange sphere shot towards their vehicle at an impossible speed, stopping just short of the hood before vanishing, leaving them in a stunned silence broken only by the frantic chirping of crickets. These first-hand accounts, recorded in museum guestbooks and online forums, consistently emphasize the light's seemingly intelligent behavior, a quality that separates it from a simple atmospheric reflection and fuels the belief that there is a conscious presence behind the glow. The arrival of sophisticated modern technology promised to finally lift the veil on this enduring mystery, but the spook light has proven to be an elusive subject. Paranormal investigation teams equipped with high-definition cameras, spectrographs, and thermal imaging scopes have descended upon the area, hoping to capture definitive proof. The results, however, have been frustratingly inconclusive. While many have successfully recorded the light's dance, the footage often appears as a bright, unresolved blob against the blackness of the night, lacking the detail needed for analysis. Drones launched to chase the light and view it from above have reported sudden losses of GPS signal and unexplained battery drain when approaching the light's typical appearance zone. On one notable expedition, a team using a high-powered telescope claimed that when they magnified the orb, it appeared to be not a solid ball of light, but a swirling, complex structure with a brighter core. Yet, without being able to get physically closer, this observation remains speculative. The most compelling technological evidence comes from attempts to triangulate the light's position. Teams stationed at multiple points along the road have tried to pinpoint its origin simultaneously, but the light consistently appears to maintain its distance, seeming to recede as observers approach, much as it did for Robert Reed Ellison back in the 19th century. This very elusiveness in the face of technological scrutiny is, paradoxically, what keeps the legend thriving. For every skeptic who points to the light refraction theory suggesting the glow is a complex mirage caused by headlights from the distant Interstate 44 being bent through layers of air at different temperatures, there is a witness who counters that the light's behavior is too deliberate. They argue that car headlights don't split apart, merge back together, or respond to human interaction. The technological age has not solved the mystery, it has simply provided new tools for an old debate, creating a fascinating stalemate between measurable science and personal experience. The community around Hornet has watched this dance between legend and technology with a sense of wry amusement. For them, the spook light is less a puzzle to be solved and more a neighbor with quirky habits. They've seen countless experts come and go, each with a new gadget, each confident they will be the one to crack the case. Yet the light remains, its secrets intact, a testament to the idea that some wonders resist explanation, preferring instead to simply exist, glowing quietly in the Ozark night, inviting each new generation to come and see for themselves. From the glowing orbs of Marfa to the cursed ground of a North Carolina forest, from the winged harbinger of Point Pleasant to the phantom hitchhiker of Chicago's suburbs, our journey through America's strangest small-town legends reveals a landscape far richer and more mysterious than any map could ever show. These stories, in all their incredible diversity, share a common thread. They are not merely tales of monsters or ghosts, but profound expressions of the human experience, etched into the very identity of the places they haunt. They emerge from the collision of history and landscape, from moments of tragedy and unexplained wonder, and they endure because they speak to something fundamental within us all. A small town legend is more than a campfire story. It is a community's soul made visible, a way of navigating fear, processing loss, and finding meaning in the bewildering and the bizarre. These narratives become the unofficial history of a place, passed down through generations not in textbooks, but in hushed conversations and wide-eyed warnings, ensuring that the mystery outlives the very people who first experienced it. What gives these legends their enduring power is their remarkable ability to be many things at once. For the residents of these communities, a creature like the Jersey Devil or the Mothman is a point of quirky pride, a unique badge of honor that sets their home apart in a world of increasing homogeneity. They transform potential infamy into a source of economic vitality and cultural cohesion, hosting festivals, erecting statues, and welcoming outsiders into their peculiar world. Yet on a deeper level, these stories also function as cautionary tales, using fear to enforce boundaries and teach lessons. The legend of the Melonheads keeps curious teenagers from wandering into dangerous, isolated woodlands, while the crybaby bridge archetype serves as a somber, unspoken reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of community vigilance. The legend is a container for our deepest anxieties, the fear of the unknown, the terror of being an outcast, the dread of losing a child, giving these abstract fears a name, a shape, and a location, making them somehow more manageable. Ultimately, these stories endure because they reside in the fertile ground between fact and fiction. A case like the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter or the physical barrenness of the Devil's Tramping Ground presents us with a tangible puzzle, a set of facts that resist easy explanation. This ambiguity is the lifeblood of folklore. It allows for a beautiful coexistence of the rational and the wondrous. You can stand on the viewing platform in Marfa and appreciate the scientific theory of temperature inversion, while still feeling a thrill of possibility when that lone orb begins its silent dance. You can understand the psychology of mass hysteria behind the phantom clown panics, while also recognizing the potent, timeless power of the clown as a symbol of deceptive danger. These legends do not demand belief, they simply invite curiosity. They remind us that the world is not yet fully explained, that mystery is not a flaw in our understanding but a vital part of the human condition, a spark that ignites our imagination and fuels our desire to explore. And that is the greatest invitation these stories extend, an invitation to explore. The backroads and small towns of America are a living museum of folklore, waiting for anyone with a sense of curiosity and a tank of gas. Your own region, no matter how familiar it may seem, likely holds its own whispers and wonders. Perhaps there's a local bridge with a tragic tale, a forgotten cemetery where a ghost is said to walk, or a stretch of woods where something unusual was once seen. The true magic of these legends is that they are not locked away in the past. They are a living, breathing part of our present, constantly evolving with each new telling and each new witness. So we turn the question to you, our fellow explorers of the strange. What legends haunt the corners of your world? We would be fascinated to hear about the mysterious tales from your own hometowns in the comments below. Share the stories that have been passed down in your community, the local mysteries that puzzle your neighbors and define your landscape. Your story might just be the next chapter in America's endless, fascinating collection of small-town secrets, a reminder that adventure and mystery are often hiding in plain sight, just a little ways off the main road.